Who created God if he created the universe? This age-old question has shaped debates across history. Christianity's answer is clear. God was not created. He is eternal. Join Premonition as we explore this profound mystery. The timeless question: who created God? The question of who created God has intrigued humanity across ages and cultures. It is not a modern provocation aimed at challenging religious faith, but a deep philosophical inquiry that has troubled theologians and thinkers for centuries. Christian theology offers a direct yet profound response. God was not created. The Bible provides a clear explanation. In Revelation 1 chapter 8, God declares, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." This means that God is eternal. He exists beyond the constraints of time and space. Unlike trees, planets, or even the universe itself, which had a beginning, God simply is. God as a transcendent being. Human reasoning operates within the framework of cause and effect, where everything we observe has a beginning and an end. However, Christianity presents a concept beyond this logic. God as a transcendent being. What does it mean for God to be transcendent? Transcendence means that God is not bound by the physical universe or the natural laws that govern it. Unlike everything in creation, which is subject to time, decay, and causality, God exists outside of these constraints. He is not a product of creation, but rather the origin of all that exists. This profound truth is encapsulated in the biblical account of Moses' encounter with God in the burning bush. When Moses asks for God's name, the response in Exodus 3:14 is, "I am who I am." This declaration is more than just a name. It signifies absolute self-existence. God is independent. He does not depend on anything for his existence. God is uncaused. Unlike the universe, which required a cause, God exists eternally. God is unchangeable. He does not evolve or decay over time. This idea of divine self-sufficiency is central to Christian theology. It means that God does not need a creator, nor does he rely on anything else for his existence. He exists outside of time and space, without a beginning or an end. Biblical support for God's transcendence. The Bible repeatedly affirms God's unique nature as an eternal, transcendent being. Isaiah 55, 8-9, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." Psalm 102, 25-27. "In the beginning, you laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like a garment, but you remain the same, and your years will never end." These verses highlight that God is beyond human comprehension. His existence is fundamentally different from everything else. The limits of human understanding. Because God exists outside of time and space, our human minds struggle to grasp the full nature of his being. We are accustomed to thinking in terms of beginnings and endings, but God exists beyond such limitations. Christian philosophers have long pointed out that asking who created God is a category mistake. It assumes that God is like everything else in the universe that requires a cause. But God, by definition, is not a created being. He is the source of all creation. But he himself has no origin. This concept of transcendence sets God apart from all other beings. It also reinforces his role as the ultimate foundation of reality, the one upon whom everything else depends. Thomas Aquinas and the uncaused cause argument. Throughout history, philosophers and theologians have grappled with the fundamental question of existence. If everything in the universe has a cause, then what is the ultimate source of all things? One of the most compelling answers comes from Thomas Aquinas. one of the most influential Christian philosophers of the Middle Ages. Aquinas' 5 Ways, the Proof of the Uncaused Cause. In his seminal work, Summa Theologica, Aquinas presents 5 ways to argue for the existence of God. One of these is the famous uncaused cause argument, which follows this logical sequence. 1. Everything in the universe is caused by something else. 2. A chain of causes cannot regress infinitely because there must be a starting point. 3. There must be a first cause that itself was not caused by anything else. 4. This first cause is what we call God. Why an infinite regress is impossible. Aquinas reasoned that if everything required a cause, and this chain of causes stretched back infinitely, then nothing would ever exist. Imagine a line of dominoes falling over. Each domino knocks down the next. But what started the chain? If there were an infinite number of dominoes, the chain would never have begun. There must be a first mover, a starting point that initiated everything else. In the same way, the universe must have had a first cause, something that is uncreated and self-existent. For Aquinas, this first cause can only be God. Aquinas' argument and modern science. Interestingly, modern scientific discoveries about the Big Bang theory support Aquinas' argument. Scientists now agree that the universe had a beginning, meaning it was not eternal. Since everything that begins to exist must have a cause, this points to the necessity of a first cause beyond space and time. The question then arises, what kind of first cause could create the entire universe? It must be outside of time, because time itself had a beginning. Immaterial, since physical matter was created at the universe's birth, powerful enough to create everything from nothing. Once again, this description matches perfectly with the Christian concept of God. The enduring impact of Aquinas' argument. Aquinas' reasoning remains one of the most influential philosophical arguments for God's existence. Even today, Christian theologians and philosophers continue to use his logic to defend belief in God against skeptics. While atheists and skeptics argue that the universe might have emerged spontaneously through natural laws, this does not explain where the laws themselves came from. The necessity of a first cause, one that transcends time, space, and matter, remains a powerful argument for God's existence. The skeptical perspective, challenges from modern thinkers. Despite its historical influence, the idea of an uncaused cause has not gone unchallenged. Modern scientific and philosophical developments have introduced alternative explanations for the origins of the universe, sparking intense debate between faith and reason. Richard Dawkins, The Rebuttal of Infinite Regress. In his best-selling book, The God Delusion, evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins questions the logic of the first cause argument. He argues, if everything requires a cause, then why should God be an exception? If believers claim that God does not need a cause, why not apply the same logic to the universe itself? Dawkins suggests that invoking God as the ultimate explanation merely shifts the question one step further rather than solving it. Instead, he proposes that the complexity of the universe can be explained through natural processes, particularly evolution, and the laws of physics, without requiring a supernatural creator. Stephen Hawking. Can the universe create itself? The late physicist Stephen Hawking took this argument further in his book, The Grand Design. He proposed that the laws of physics, particularly quantum mechanics and gravity, could allow the universe to arise spontaneously, out of nothing. In his view, the existence of gravity means that the universe could create itself from nothing. There is no need for a divine being to initiate creation. The idea of God as a necessary explanation for the universe is outdated. Hawking's perspective challenges traditional theological arguments by offering a purely scientific alternative to the need for a divine cause. The core debate, two opposing views. At the heart of the discussion, we find two conflicting perspectives on the nature of existence. The theistic view. God is eternal without a beginning or end, and therefore does not need a creator. He is self-existent, the necessary being that provides the foundation for all reality. The atheistic critique. Thinkers like Richard Dawkins and Stephen Hawking argue that the theistic explanation evades the fundamental question of origins rather than solving it. If everything needs a cause, they ask, why should God be the exception? This debate is not simply an abstract philosophical dispute. It carries profound implications for how we understand existence itself. If God is truly eternal, then He is the necessary foundation of all reality. Everything else exists because of Him. If, on the other hand, naturalistic explanations are sufficient to account for the existence of the universe, then belief in a divine being becomes unnecessary. At the core of this debate is a fundamental question. What does Christianity truly teach about God's eternal nature? The theistic position, God as the necessary being. Christianity asserts that God is a necessary being, meaning that His existence is not contingent on anything else. This belief is rooted in both philosophical reasoning and biblical revelation. Number 1. Philosophically, something must be eternal. If everything required a cause, then there would be an infinite regress of causes, which is logically impossible. There must be an uncaused cause, something that has always existed and does not depend on anything else. This is what Christians call God. 2. Biblically, God's self-existence is clearly stated. Exodus 3:14. When Moses asks for God's name, God replies, I am who I am. This statement signifies that God simply exists, independent of anything else. Revelation 22:13. God declares, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. These verses emphasize that God is not a created being. He exists outside of time and space, beyond the limits of human comprehension. God exists beyond time and space. According to Christian theology, God is not bound by time and space. He does not experience the passage of time as we do. He does not change, grow old, or exist within a linear sequence of events. Instead, He simply is, eternally present, existing outside the confines of past, present, and future. This concept is clearly expressed in Revelation 22:13, where God declares, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. This statement is more than just a poetic expression. It is a profound declaration of God's absolute sovereignty and eternal existence. As humans, we are born, we grow, and we eventually die. Our existence is measured by time. However, God exists outside of time. This idea is further reinforced in Psalm 92. Before the mountains were born, before you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. This verse underscores the idea that God existed before creation itself. Unlike everything else, which comes into being and eventually perishes, God is beyond such constraints. He is not a part of creation. He is the source of all existence. If God were created, He would be subject to time, change, and dependency, like everything else in the universe. But Christian doctrine holds that God is completely independent and self-sufficient. Furthermore, this concept aligns with philosophical arguments that suggest something eternal must exist as the foundation for all things. If everything in existence were finite, then there would be nothing to explain the very existence of the universe. The idea of an eternal, transcendent God provides an answer to this question. St. Augustine, God created time itself. One of the greatest minds in Christian history, St. Augustine of Hippo, explored this idea extensively in his work Confessions. He tackled the difficult question, what was God doing before creation? Was he simply waiting for eternity? Augustine's answer was revolutionary. Before creation, time itself did not exist. God did not exist in time before creation. He created time itself. Time is not an absolute reality that exists independently of God. Since time is part of creation, God exists beyond it. This means that asking, who created God, is a misunderstanding of divine nature. God does not exist within time like we do. He is the unchanging, eternal being who created time itself. Augustine's insights align closely with modern physics, which suggests that time and space are intertwined. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is a property of the universe and is dependent on space and matter. This scientific concept mirrors Augustine's theological argument. If time is part of creation, then the creator must be outside of time. Thus, the question of who created God becomes irrelevant. Because God does not belong to the realm of created things, he is the necessary self-existent being upon which all reality depends. This understanding of God as eternal, timeless, and transcendent is one of the fundamental pillars of Christian theology, setting him apart from everything else that exists. God and the laws of the universe. Many skeptics ask, if everything has a cause, why doesn't God? The answer to this question lies in the distinction between things that begin to exist and things that are eternal. Everything within the universe requires a cause, because it had a beginning. However, something that is eternal does not require a cause. It simply exists without a beginning or an end. This is why Christian theology asserts that causality applies only to things with a beginning. If something has a definite point of origin, it must have been brought into existence by something else. However, God has no beginning. He has always existed. Therefore, he does not require a cause. This logic is reflected in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Notice that the verse makes no mention of God being created. He is simply there, existing before all things. Unlike the universe, which has a starting point, God is self-existent and eternal. Philosophers often categorize reality into two types of existence. 1. Contingent beings, things that depend on something else for their existence, e.g., humans, planets, stars. 2. Necessary being, something that exists by its own nature and cannot not exist. God, in Christian theology, is described as a necessary being. He is not dependent on anything else. Everything else is contingent upon him. The Kalam cosmological argument. The Kalam cosmological argument offers a rational defense for God's existence based on the origins of the universe. This argument, originally developed in Islamic philosophy and later popularized by Christian philosopher William Lane Craig, follows a simple three-step reasoning. Number 1, everything that begins to exist has a cause. 2, the universe began to exist. 3, therefore the universe must have a cause. The reasoning behind this argument is that nothing can come into existence from absolute nothingness. If something has a beginning, it must have a reason for its existence. Scientific support for a beginning. Modern scientific discoveries strongly support the idea that the universe had a definite beginning, which aligns with the Kalam cosmological argument. The strongest piece of evidence comes from the Big Bang theory, first proposed in 1927 by Georges Lemaire, a Belgian astronomer who was also a Catholic priest. Two key scientific discoveries reinforce this idea. the expanding universe. In the 1920s, Edwin Hubble observed that galaxies are moving away from each other, suggesting that the universe is expanding. If we reverse this expansion, we arrive at a single point of origin, a beginning. Cosmic microwave background. Radiation, CMBR, discovered in the 1960s, this radiation is considered the afterglow of the Big Bang and serves as strong evidence that the universe had a starting point. These findings strongly align with Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If the universe had a beginning, it must have had a cause. However, this cause cannot be something within the universe itself, since time, space, and matter did not exist yet. For this reason, the cause of the universe must be timeless. Since time itself began at the creation of the universe, the cause must exist beyond time. Immaterial. Because physical matter did not yet exist, the cause must not be made of matter. Extremely powerful. Since this cause brought an entire universe into existence, it must possess immense power. This description aligns perfectly with the Christian understanding of God, a timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and all-powerful being who is the ultimate cause of everything. If God is eternal, he does not see history as we do. Past, present, and future are one to him. This belief is central to Christian faith, giving meaning to life, purpose, and destiny. Whether you accept or question this idea, the debate continues. What do you think? Can something truly exist beyond time and space?